Not a Miami Gallery walkthrough with VIP Ambassador Maria Brito as she discusses her favorite artworks on view. Maria is an award-winning New York-based contemporary art advisor, author, and curator. A Harvard graduate, originally from Venezuela, her first monograph, Out There, published by Point Leaf Press in 2013, was the recipient of the Best Book Awards in both the art and design categories. In 2015, Brito was selected by Complex Magazine as one of the 20 power players in the art world. And in 2020, she was named by Art News as one of the visionaries who helped shape the art world. Joining Maria in the conversation today are the following galleries: Embajada from Puerto Rico, Proyectos Ultravioleta from Guatemala, Carbon 12 from Dubai, Night Gallery, The Pit, and Nino Meyer Gallery, all from Los Angeles. You're welcome to keep your cameras on. Just be aware that the panel will be recorded. And please put any questions in the chat and enjoy the conversation. Maria, whenever you're ready.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you for the introduction. It sounds very pompous, but not that, exaggeratedly, egocentric. So thank you guys for inviting me to do this. And thank you to the galleries for being here. Hi, Jose. And for all the people who are joining us. And so I'm glad that we're doing this because in a way, Nada forced me to go through everything, even though it's my job to do this. This year we have like this avalanche of OVRs and emails about a nanosecond, that doesn't go by that we don't get one of these emails. So it's a little bit overwhelming. However, I did enjoy very much going through all the galleries at NADA because it continues to be very selective art fair that also chooses very well the galleries that participate with a real emphasis on highlighting quality works from mostly emerging artists. And so that's actually one of the areas that I love and embrace the most. And if I can be selling a $2 million painting, that's great. But if I can be helping the career of a young artist, that actually is my sweet spot and where I get the biggest satisfaction. And so I chose a variety of artists here. Some of them are already not that emerging, but a little bit more entering their mid-careers. And some of them I had never heard about. I felt compelled because of the imagery. And that was my entry point. I just didn't go and see, well, who is the coolest? Who is the one who is like hustling? No, I went through the quality of the works. And, mind you, most things here I'm seeing through a screen, even though about, I would say 70% of the artists I chose, I've seen the works in person. And so I just give you that kind of background so we know where we are as to why I chose this artist within the galleries that I selected. So I didn't get every artist that is being shown by that gallery this year, but just a handful. So we have 6 galleries, I think, and we can start whenever, the slideshow pulls up, which I'm not in charge of, by the way. Thanks.
1 second.
And thank you, Stefan. He actually was the one who invited me to do this. So I wouldn't be here without it, Stefan telling me. He thought he needed to convince me and gave me, I'll give you a print. It's like, I don't need any of that. I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? All right. So here is Juni Figueroa, who I think he's hilarious and a great artist from Puerto Rico. Juni was at the Whitney Biennial many, many years ago. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoy a sense of humor. I'm connected to the Latino heritage, and, just to clarify, Latino and Latin American, I'm Latina because I have been in the States for over 20 years, and I don't claim national privilege, which is what makes a difference. I have not gotten back to Venezuela in 15 years. I have nobody is my mentor or patron or sugar daddy there. So I have nothing to do with that. And like, I have a deep connection with Latinos and Latinx, and Huni is one of those, not only by virtue of being Puerto Rican, but also because he's moved back and forth between different cities in the US and Puerto Rico many times. And so I'm thrilled that, you know, you have those socks, and that you also work with him, you being Puerto Rican too, and you know, having this amazing program at Embajada.
Thank you, Maria, and thank you for choosing the work of Juni that I co-represent with our dear friend Stefan. So Juni, these socks that you choose actually were part of a three-person exhibition that I did recently in the gallery. It was Juni and Catherine Benhar and Francisco Yel, which it was a more classical painter from Puerto Rico. As some of you might know, Juni has been exploring the idea of tropicalism in Puerto Rico and Latin America specifically. The coconut is an important center topic on his career for the last years, I would say. Definitely deeply influenced by the area of Piñones, which is in Loíza. That's how he started showing. Maybe last year or 2 years ago, he showed something similar like that at Stefan's booth, where he would put coconuts next to each other, and that's the way the people will leave them after consuming them. And so it becomes like a ready-made, of course. And so exploring this area as well, like everybody that sells the coconuts, they make their own paintings selling coco frios. So he absorbs this information and translates it into his own language. And of course, in a funny way, because these are like extra large socks that they're made with towels that he, the fabric is towel, and he covers them over wood, and they're like spray painting. But of course, with a very sense of humor, because as I mentioned, they're extra large socks. Something very important to mention is that Juni, along Pablo de la Barra, a few years back, was the co-founder of the Tropical Biennial, that hopefully is going to come out with a book soon, right, Stefan? And I think, you know, since then, and even before that, he's been exploring this idea of like, you know, how his work is conceived as a social and communal exercise, where he brings people together for different moments or utopic, you know, the utopic idea of coming together within his own language of tropicalism. I think, Maria, at some point, you met him in Puerto Rico. I was talking
he took me to a house in the trees, and it was like a crazy expedition, and like we had to climb trees in the jungle, and we sat on top. Yeah, it was very strange. But it was, I mean, he's a very imaginative and original artist, which obviously is something that speaks to me. He doesn't repeat himself. He can make amazing moves that are not necessarily triggered by repetition or wanting to please a market. And so I appreciate the qualities that somebody like him does. Also, he's multimedia. He's done so many things in different you know, areas. But I think that I appreciate that some of the things he does best is that having that sense of humor that he never loses, even when he wants to tackle a serious or more serious you know, topic, he still has that interesting Latino, fun, you know, kind of interesting way of seeing things with optimism.
Yes. And something very important to mention, Juni was presented with when Stefan was presenting a presentation of him at Artissima, he got the prize of the Artissima Illis Present Future Prize. So he's gonna have a solo show next year at the Castello de Rivoli in Turin during Artissima. So we are very excited, and I'm very happy for him to keep helping him to grow his career, which he's a very, very sensitive artist, mostly, you know, sometimes undervalued, I would say, in some ways, but he definitely has so much to offer, and I think his work is getting better and better every day and more mature. So I'm very happy that you choose him.
Yeah, well, I did it because I really love the work.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. And I see them hanging behind you, so I know
Yes, these are
they're real.
they're real.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Christopher.
Thank you.
All right, what's next?
This is Garland Zellner. She's a new artist at Nino Meyer Gallery. First,
Oh yeah, hold on. I can't see this light show. I don't know why. Sorry. Well, let's see. Okay, I don't know why I can't see the slide, but I know what I chose and I know why I chose her. So if you don't mind, just let me say why and then you explain. Okay. So I know she's an Austrian artist. And the reason why I chose her work is because it's incredibly difficult in all my years doing this job to find an artist that navigates the separation or the fusion, better said, of figuration and abstraction making sense, right? Like, because most people who attempt that fall on their faces flat and hard. And this woman does it with ease. And what is more is that she's also using these topics that have to do with the gender roles and what it means to be a woman these days. And so she's reversing the cowboy, which is a typical male and macho thing, and now she makes them women. And one of the things that actually caught my attention is that she uses egg tempera, which is a medium that not many artists use. And it made me think a lot of Renaissance artists and Botticelli and things like that, because that's what they used. And so I was like, wow, these colors are super intense for this woman to be using egg tempera with others. And also what a humongous, painting, and how she accomplishes is like, I barely can name like 3 people, maybe Cecily Brown is one of them, that can do that mix of figuration and abstraction in like really big scale and not make just a mess, And so I was quite impressed with her work, and that's why I chose it.
I thought it was very interesting that you mentioned the subject of the cowboy or the cowgirl in this case, because I think it is really important to understanding her source of inspiration for these paintings. The American take on the cowboy is very macho, very, typically male. So it is really interesting that she chose to paint women specifically. And she also revealed to me that the models in her paintings were all women she knew, usually artists, intellectuals, writers, women that she admired. So she wanted to take this powerful figure of the male cowboy and translate that into these women in her life and lionize them in a way, in this stylish, fun way, in order to elevate them and celebrate them in this, in the guise of the cowboy. And you think about, in the spaghetti westerns and in film, the cowboy is always a bit of a rebel, but there's always a moral or ethical reasoning for his doling out of justice. So he is the good guy, but he does anything to get that justice served. So she's sort of taking that trope and turning it into a way to celebrate these women and place them as custodians of justice in her paintings, which I thought was really lovely. And this was sort of a continuation of some works that she did about bars and interiors where intellectuals and writers and artists were meeting. So they were community centers, they were safe spaces for discourse and discussion, much in the same way like a surrealist Parisian cafe. So she is really celebrating something personal in the subject. And of course, you mentioned the way that she's blending the subjects and the figuration with this beautiful use of color and abstraction. And she does it in a way which is very stream of conscious, very just kind of improvised and organic. And she speaks about it in a reactive way. She had to use this purple to react to this yellow and so on and so forth. So there's a careful choice in the subjects and a very intentional way that she's painting the subjects, but there's a really wonderful improvised way that she's using color. And those two elements coming together are really unique. And I think you're right, it's not something that every artist does successfully.
Especially at that scale.
Yes, you did mention the scale as well. And I think it's hard to tell sometimes online because you're looking at, you know, a 4-inch square, but they are very large paintings. And that was in part a playful choice as well. She likes to play with scale and again, lionizing these women and placing them in a monumental painting is another way to play with that and play with your expectations.
Well, it's amazing. And I think it's for the scale and the masterful execution, it's at a great price, and it should go soon if it's not already gone.
Yes, well, she's also going to be doing a solo show with us in January, so I'm very excited. She's an Austrian painter who kind of reveals a little bit of that European connection we have, which is unique, I think, to Nina Meyer Gallery. So, but she's actually new to our program, so she'll be doing her first solo show with us in January of 2020.
Well, I'm excited to see how it looks because she's incredibly talented.
Well, we're thrilled that you chose her.
Yeah. And the second work that I chose from your presentation is Anthony. And what I love obviously about this is the narrative, and I know, well, and also, you know, how he uses mixed media and negative space too, which I think it's important also when I find an artist who can make negative space be so strong in the entire composition. It makes me excited too, because it's also not an easy thing to do, because sometimes it feels like, well, you know, leave the negative space and it looks like incomplete really. And sometimes it's like an afterthought or trying too hard, you know, sometimes it's really trying too hard. You shouldn't have left that negative space, you know, but this is not the case. And I know he is a very nice Canadian with a Trinidadian background. And so he's tackling the narratives of Black people, but also from a different perspective, because the history of the United States is not the history of Canada, you know, and so also the history of the Caribbeans and Trinidadians, and like anybody in the Caribbean who grew up there, you know, a lot of Black people in the islands of the Caribbean have had very prosperous lives because they built communities many, many years ago and built businesses and great families, and, you know, and then obviously the children wanted better and, you know, moved and expanded and, you know, looked for other opportunities. So although I don't know the whole kind of, you know, family history of Anthony, I can tell that he is very inspired by the narratives of Caribbeans. And I think he's super strong. Did he graduate already from his MFA, or he's still, okay. Yes. So I wasn't sure.
Yes, he is a relatively young artist. He's just around 30, early 30s. But as you mentioned, he's Canadian and he has Trinidadian roots. So a lot of his work is about these parallel universes, you know, growing up in Canada, but traveling back and forth to Trinidad. And in this particular painting, you know, you pointed out the negative space, which I think is probably a result of his use of media. Sometimes he's leaving a space free because the negative space is actually occupied by a material. It's very difficult to see online, but the surfaces of these works are very textured and layered. So he's painting on top of cut paper, bits of textiles and things like that. So if you see a tropical shirt, for instance, sometimes the print is not painted. It's really a bit of fabric that he's left untouched. So part of that, I think that use of negative space that you mentioned is really a result of him blocking out bits of fabric, textiles, and textured paper and letting that kind of come through. And you can just barely see, I think, that the wall, it seems white, but there's really bits of lace and layered paper under there. So I wish I could show these to you in person so that you
Right, the
can
details we're missing that, but we have the big
Yes.
picture.
Yes,
So
but
I trust that it's much, but everything is much better than in the pictures for
Yes.
sure.
Yes, of course. But that textured sort of surface that he's painting on, sometimes it's there, what seems random. Other times it's adding to the images on top. So the hair might have a texture to it with the paper underneath, or again, some sort of sense of patterning that comes through in the subjects is from the paper, the fabric itself.
Well, that's great to know. And I'm also sure he's going to have an amazing career.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that I got to know him through you guys.
His work is really genuine. That's one of the things I think that is really important to celebrate about this particular painter, is he reveals so much of himself. They're very personal family photographs, and you really feel connected in that way to these really cherished moments and time. And the fact that he's sharing those with us it really comes through, and yeah, it really pulls at your heartstrings, I think.
Well, I'm happy that he is doing that work and that you guys are showing him. And so I can't wait to see more.
Yes.
It's also a large painting too. So
very
it's
nice paintings, yes. And I think that's playful. And usually you have a little 6x4 photograph, and then you have now a 10-foot painting. So you're really able to explore all those little elements. I mean, you notice the kitchen elements and things like that you kind of get lost in, and you really feel like you're part of this, like this massive tableau, and you're really invited into this family gathering by this sense of scale.
That's great. So thank you so much, Margaret. So I really can't see this light, and I am afraid of touching anything because I feel that something horrible is going to happen. So who's next?
So next up is Akira Ikesoe, Maria.
Oh,
and,
yes.
Just to curtail that and say thank you for actually accepting to be here and to become a NADA ambassador.
Now I'm going to hold you accountable for the print, you know?
Right.
I'm joking.
No, it's really great that that we're all here, and again, also thank you for selecting Akira's work that I'm really proud to be exhibiting at NADA this year. Specifically, all our presentation really is a reflection of the many lockdowns that we've faced this year, and it comes from spending a lot of time in our interior spaces, and through that, a yearning for the outdoors and for nature, but also a really strong connection to houseplants for the vitality that they give the spaces that we inhabit. Specifically, with regards to Akira, he's presenting a new series titled Not So Still Life, which of course starts to reimagine the traditional still life genre of painting in a way that's very particular to him. I mean, characteristically to his work in painting, he typically paints oils on canvases through many thin layers of paint. So the execution is always very precise and very spot on. And he always has this very like warm or rich palette that he's painting with. And yet in this new series, also like many of his other series, there's also a very playful element to it. At a first glance, it just seems like a traditional still life painting, but when you start to actually see and examine each of them, you realize that there's actually a connection and a very specific series of ideas of why he chose the objects that he did. For example, that in this painting in particular, there's this plant, which in Guatemala at least is called lengua de suegra, whose tops have been actually cut off and continue in the next part of the shelf. And next to it, for example, to the left, that African mask. And if you follow the mouthpiece of the mask itself, you actually can connect to that little hole on top. So you can actually follow a very subtle but very playful narrative between them, hence the title of Not So Still Life, which is really wonderful. And that in a way also really connects to his just general understanding of life. Akira is actually Japanese, and he's always insisted that nature is not only around us, but most importantly, that nature lives within us, right? So this in a way also has to go with the tradition of animism in a way, and considering the intelligence and the spirit of every object, living and non-living. And which to me, I mean, other than having just that for the paintings for being such a visual feast for the eyes, something that I love about them is that they really teach us to actually reconsider everything around us, not in the Marie Kondo way of actually like cleaning everything up and throwing everything away, but really of intention in general, which is something that I really appreciate both from working with Akira and also from really experiencing his paintings.
You know, they give a sense of they give a sense of calm in the midst of chaos. And I mean, I know who he is, and I know that he lives in New York, or he moved. He's still in New York. He's still, right? And it's like a mad scientist, you know, because I know he's like looking for all the shapes that have a relationship and how to connect them, right? So there is a lot more than just, you know, the idea of, well, I'm painting nature inside because we have been in this lockdown for so long. It's also how he matches these shapes, and also each shape has a narrative under that it makes the whole thing quite interesting. And so I like looking at them because they transmit some sense of order and calm, but also they are in the midst of chaos, right? Like how our lives are, you know, like, and especially he is in New York, we're in New York, and so it's chaotic, right, all the time. And this year, you know, it just came to show us what chaotic can be. And so I think that his series is amazing. I love them all, you know, all of them. So I'm thrilled that you're showing them together. I wish we could see them all hanging in one wall. But in the meantime, it's, you know, it's great selection of his work. And, you know, they are also like a bargain. Honestly, they are a bargain. So they are. So that's a great thing.
No, I mean, for the quality of the work, you know, the very distinct language that he's been able to develop, and just his general capacity as a painter, I agree they're very undervalued or well valued for what they are. And in terms of them being in New York, for all of you guys that are there, I'm further south in the tropics, but these can actually be seen at his studio at the Elizabeth Foundation for the Arts. And that's one place where one can experience. So if anybody in the chat actually wants to go and see them in person, they're really great on the screen, but really they're incredible in person. So
that's a great thing to know.
So that we can put you guys in touch.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Stefan.
I love those. Those are great.
Hi, William.
Hello, how are you doing?
Well, thank you. What is it in your background? What's the painting behind you?
It's a Andy Wool painting that I bought when I first started working at Night Gallery.
Yes.
The very first thing I bought, actually.
It's true. It's all about mountains with him. Yep.
It is. I'm a big fan, as you can tell.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having us. And I'm
thank
excited
you.
about your choices.
You know, I really love your program, and I'm always excited to see the artists you show, the new and the old. And so it's, you know, it's my pleasure to be able to have, you know, to select a few from what you guys send. And I don't know what's on the screen, but you tell me, and then I'll talk, and then you talk.
It's the Tawny Longsdale painting.
Oh yeah, this was sold.
Figures.
Sorry, you know, that's like always with Night, things are sold, but which is a great thing. Not to me though, but it was sold. I love this painting, and I love how in my usually the things I love are not as minimal as this, and this is such a strong painting where there's nothing extra could have made it better, you know. I mean, it's just, it has exactly what it needs to have, and those curves are so amazing and intense, and they pull you in. And you know that the palette is kind of muted, but it's just so attractive and compelling, and it's also soulful, you know. And so I felt this was a winner. I thought it was the best work in your presentation.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, she, you know, this is the first painting that we've kind of, you know, got from her. She's somebody I met about 4 years ago. And then Davida recently went and did a studio visit and really loved the work. And it's just been exciting to kind of see her grow as an artist. And this painting, you know, has an incredible amount of depth in it. So when you see it in person, there's actually a little bit of kind of splatter from paint on it. You know, just the way she's used oil in this very thin way, how you can kind of see the underpainting or the pink coming through from the back. And for her, it was actually a breakthrough. She had a breakup and started doing drawings, just kind of sitting down, and it was really just kind of a natural flow. And she hadn't really gone from drawing to painting. And so it was a moment where she just kind of intuitively made this drawing of this uncoupling, and had kind of this beautiful drawing, and then was able to translate it into a painting. And it was kind of a breakthrough for her. I think the colors were new as well. It was not something she had done. But it really, for her, was kind of the step forward. And I feel like has kind of opened up a lot of doors for her personally. Certainly also the breakup.
I was gonna tell you, let's have her break up more, right? Like, I mean, that she needs some pain, then we can give it to her. I mean,
yeah, right. It's and seeing it in person too. It was really hard to photograph. The colors are for whatever reason don't photograph as that well. So when you see it in person, it's just like if you can come to the gallery, you'll be blown away.
well, I wish I could go to the gallery in LA and see it in person, but even though we don't have that option, I tell you that, you know, in the image, it's quite remarkable. And that's why I think I'm telling you that was the best work of everything. And some of the artists that, you know, you have for this iteration of Nada, I have seen in person a lot. And, you know, obviously this caught my attention because, and thank you for saying, it's the first painting you got from her.
I mean, it's the very first painting, yes.
Well, I'm glad we know her now.
Good start.
So we just want to watch her break up a lot. No,
yeah.
no. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in pain to create. I've been creating myself, even though I'm not an artist. And I've had a rough life, but most of the time it's been very fortunate, thank God. So I don't believe in the pain.
It's just another avenue.
But I do believe, like, if somebody breaks up, you know, it's kind of it's a push to do something better with your life.
A moment of reflection too. The moment of reflection.
Also, that's true.
Yeah, introspective.
So I think the other ones were Andrea Marie. Like, I love her work.
Yeah, go
phenomenal.
for it.
No, it's phenomenal. Yeah. And I just want to say that it's, before you take it on, is that she reminds me of early Kelty Ferry's work that had that, you know, incredible mix of intense colors and layers and, you know, spray paint and blurriness. And so, you know, that kind of, I always think these things are so hard when you're an abstract painter and you're able to move and bring so much edginess and draw people in with color and dynamism and energy, that it's a very unique quality for a painter. And so I love that she's doing that. And as a woman abstractionist, that she's, you know, exploring this territory, which is, as you know, mostly male up until recently, right? And that she's head on doing it with confidence, you know, so that her paintings scream confidence to me. Like, I can do this and I can really do my thing, you know? And so
she's one of the things that I really admire about her is that she has all these influences. You know, you kind of can name them all. I mean, you can kind of get a sense of who they are just from looking at her paintings. But the kind of action and the energy that she puts into it is really when she comes at, you know, you get her in her painting. So there are all these influences from kind of the historical painters of Abex painters of our past, but then her voice starts to come through the more that she's painting. And that's something that, for me, seeing a young artist go from, you know, these people who inspire her and it being able to use kind of that inspiration and put it out in her own voice is the key. And I think that's something that she's doing more of, and it's really been exciting to watch. And certainly the kind of political environment has changed her paintings. I mean, there's even more energy, there's more kind of intensity. She's fired up, and I think it's coming through in her paintings, and it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's I love the works. So and you know, I also see that she can really kind of create a great career in a space where she, as you said, when she brings her own is when she's going to be shining the most.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
I agree.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, William. Thanks. Who's next? Let's see. I can't see the screen. I can see the whole thing. So I don't know what's on the screen.
This is Karusha, are you there? This is Bernard. At least I'm able to see Bernard.
Oh, okay. Courage.
Oh, there was another person ahead of me. That's why I didn't. Okay, I'm here.
I mean, for the people, you are not gonna be present. I mean, seriously. It's only what? It's only midnight in Dubai. No, I'm kidding. It's
No, it's only 9:30.
Yeah. How are you?
Excellent. I really miss you all. Listen, on a personal note, it's really frustrating to be so far away. Thank you for doing that. And by the way, this is the first time this year I'm doing any kind of a Zoom thing. But for the Nada family, for Maria, for Stefan, you know, for everyone, thank you so much for organizing that, because we are very far away and we really miss you.
Well, it's mutual, you know. Well, I'm not that, I mean, I'm far away from you, but not so far away from many people. It's just very, you know, challenging right now. So, but I'm glad to see you in the gallery, and that, you know, you got a very beautiful presentation for this year. And, you know, this artist I love Bernard. I love how he is able to actually kind of change and reinvent himself with something that could be so boring and repetitive as the abstract, you know, geometry and abstraction. And I feel that he has this sense of playfulness and the willingness to experiment with color. And so that is, I think, one of his strongest features and his strongest capabilities, and how he mixes colors every time in such a different way. I mean, like he does series, and those series may look alike in different shapes and sizes and whatnot, but then he shifts to something else, and I'm like, damn, he surprised me again. You know what I mean? I was like, I thought he was just gonna be the same, and then he switches it again, and I'm like, this guy is like, it's very good. And I say this after watching his work for maybe about, you know, his career developed for maybe about 6 years or something, since you introduced me to him the first time as an artist. And like, it's also, he's incredible when he does small and when he does medium and when he does large, which is also not so common to find. You know, he can give you the same sense of amazingness and immersion in his color combinations. And you know, I just find him a master of color. Honestly, he's incredible.
I mean, look, you said everything that needs to be said, and that is true. He has this sense of reinvention. So it's a very steady artist. So in his practice, he's very serious, very genuine. And it's true that he has very often this kind of a back and forth with the history of abstraction. Yet, keep in mind, it started extremely figurative. So I think this ease he had with figuration also allows him, for example, like the work we presented for this year, they're almost like masks. The small work like that's being shown now on the screen, you know. So it's almost a face. Then there is a larger work that is totally kind of a mask form. So I mean, I have very little to add to what you said, Maria. And regarding the dimensions, it's pretty fascinating that you really jump for almost like 4 standard formats. I mean, I call it standard into quotation marks, you know, and those formats really create a completely different atmosphere, you know, and I mean, it was kind of a seldom occasion that we had really large works. So those are the double mask or double faces, but it's just breathtaking, you know. So the surface, and I really like it, as you said, you feel like, oh, we have seen it all. But once you are confronted in an analog way, you're facing the painting, you just realize, oh my God, this is so damn painterly. You know, there is so much happening on the surface.
Yeah, he's excellent. And so, just not to drag this on, I chose also your 3 figurative painters.
Thank you.
Yes, and I love their works, and the reason also is because the 3 male painters who are very much into portraiture, they are so incredibly different, you know, among themselves. And so this is just a very quick example of how 3 artists who are young can do and tackle portraiture in such a different way from very different backgrounds and very different places, because, you know, one is from Iran and another one is German. Is Philip German?
Philip is Austrian, so is
Austrian,
Bernhard, actually.
right? And then we have a Mexican.
Yeah, exactly.
Half Mexican, half Austrian. I mean, you know, so, but mostly Mexican. So I thought that this was good to highlight as, you know, because also these are the type of painters that you want to, I see that you have behind you the portrait, which I absolutely love, because there's so much art history there. You know, it's like, it reminds me of Las Meninas, you know, but like the face has been blurred, and, you know, it's his own take on art history, and just extrapolating such a famous character that, you know, even Picasso was obsessed with recreating Las Meninas, and we still don't know what it means. And like, you know, so I love those nerd art history type of things, you know, because they make me and my collectors, you know, learn something and dream and kind of, you know, bring it to the present with a twist. And so I love your 3 portrait artists, you know, because they are amazing.
Thank you very much. Look, I mean, contemporary painting was a focus of the gallery from early, and me on a personal note, I started collecting in the 90s. I started collecting figurative art, you know, figurative painting. So I have a kind of a natural tendency going through it, but it was a privilege finding such young physicians who are actually all of them developing a very solid body of work. If you notice, even with the young Iranian artist, you know, he's deprived of everything. He hasn't seen any museum outside Iran, you know, like he's very limited in his research. He's limited to the internet and eventually books, you know. Yet he has this, as you mentioned, this he grasped the history of art. I don't know if you remember, like this crazy political portrait he did in Chicago, last year, where he played with all those leaders and so on. So the 3 of them have a crazy different position, but yes, you're right. They are all going back and forth with history of art, and also for our collector, they bring a new conversation about things that you don't see necessarily anymore, you know.
Yes, and you know, you know, they're great, and I feel that these are the type of artists that you want to have a series, you know, because like you just don't want to have one, you want to have a bunch of them. And I know that you have presented them in this way, like you have presented a bunch of small paintings, even though they work in different scales and they do it really well. But particularly Amir, who is in Iran, and, you know, we follow each other on Instagram, and I feel like, I mean, I feel such a privilege, you know, because in a way, like, you know, I feel like, you know, his thoughts and feelings, and like also like he always sends me like notes and messages and little, you know, things like, thank you for posting this because I'm learning, you know, I'm seeing things like I would have never seen had it not been because I have a connection to, you know, Instagram and you and Kurosh, you know, like, and so like this type of talent and commitment has to be celebrated, because it's not that we're just celebrating that he's in Iran. Like, that's not, it's the point is like his work is good, you know, and that he can really do
Totally.
great work and get it done under, you know, circumstances that most of us will never experience, thank God, you know. So it's not just the surroundings, because I don't really like to measure people like just because of that, but because of the quality of the works and his imagination, and he also sense of humor, which he does have a lot. And you know, he's a great artist, and I hope that, you know, he can keep growing regardless of where he is, you know, and doing amazing things.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, that's the reality of it, and it is very important also not to necessarily make a focus out of an artist just because of their nationality or other non-artistic criteria. But yeah, that's true. He has humor. He's very smart. He's very consistent. But it's also like, I really thank all of you, like the NADA platform, you, Maria, you know, for making those artists who are so remote and who has very limited access to the outside world to be a little bit more recognized, you know. Thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you for doing that. And so I think we just have one more, I believe.
Adam from the pit.
Oh yes, hi Adam. So I don't know what's first. Is it Austin?
First, you have Bella Foster.
Oh yes, Bella is amazing, and I mean, first of all, I love your program, and I know that you are so invested in supporting artists, mostly from the West Coast, not all, but mostly. And you know, it like your program feels fresh and interesting and fun, and not trying too hard, and not being like bullshit and trying people like to confuse them with bullshit and conceptual. And no, but you know what? The emperor has no clothes, baby. But you do have your clothes on, and they are Gucci, you know, because honestly, I'm tired of that. And so Bella is phenomenal, and I love the composition, and also what I love is the medium. And so this combo of watercolor and heavier paint mounted on canvas, which I think is very unique to her practice, because she's worked a lot with watercolor. And so, you know, I feel that her work is fresh and also has that glimmer of optimism as Californians, you know, always have for the most part.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, going back to what you said, I mean, I think our program, it makes me happy the way that you described it, because that's exactly what we want it to be. I mean, we are really drawn to artists that do make bold, playful works. We really respond to artists that are responding to their own lives, their own environments. We are not particularly interested in heavy conceptualism with the work. We really like aesthetics to be foregrounded, for it to be gestural, playful, fun. And I think the three artists that you selected are pretty indicative of that. With the Bella piece that we're looking at, it's cool that you mentioned the canvas. That is a new direction for her. She was exclusively working in watercolor and gouache on paper for the majority of her career. We did a solo show in right when the pandemic started in the end of February, and it was the first time she did works on canvas. So one of the things that's pretty unique is she's now using, it's called a watercolor ground, which is a type of pigment in place of gesso, which responds to water in a similar way that paper does, in the way that it absorbs the water and allows for the dispersion of pigment. It's not exactly the same as paper, but it gives a similar watercolor effect on top of a canvas. Yeah, I mean, this particular piece I think is interesting too. Her work really ranges from interiors, landscapes, and then more imagined compositions where she juxtaposes sort of images from friends' environments. This one is from a colleague's desk. It's one of the few pieces of hers that has like a specific politic, and I think a lot of people have spoken today about how this moment in time is influencing artists. And I think you can see it right here too. That has like "Keep Abortion Legal" on it, "War is Over." And yeah, I think throughout her career, there is a a feminist politic and perspective that it blends itself into her overall practice. Yeah, so.
Well, she's doing it right. And I'm very, excited to see more. So who's next? Is it Hillary?
Next is Austin and Eddie.
Austin. I actually discovered Austin maybe about 8 or 9 years ago. And he was his face of where everything was like black and white and monochrome and, a very cubist. And I was always like, but dude, you have to work with color. He's like, well, but right now I'm in this phase, but I'm like, but you do have to work with color, right? And so he stayed in that phase of black, white, maybe some gold and some brown for many years. And thank God he moved on from that. I mean, because he is so good and so talented. And he, I love that he still responds to this cubist idea that he has, of how his work develops, but it's also a very fun way to work with geometry. And he always throws in something that is like a surprising element. And obviously his color palette is wow, it's really incredible. And I love how he mixes, he's great. I mean, I'm shocked that he took him so long to actually embrace color. I mean, it was the beginning of his career. Okay, fine. But, he was reluctant. He's like, no, I'm on a black, it was like his Picasso blue face. It was that, you know what I mean? He just didn't want to move from that.
Yeah.
So I'm thrilled that you're showing him. He's very cool. He's a very cool and committed artist.
Yeah, his work's great. We're going to have a solo show with him in March here in Los Angeles. Another change that happened over the past couple years with his work is for a long time, the works were near pure abstraction and where the forms were more mimicking sort of buildings and environments or landscapes. He's doing these bird series, which is what you're looking at. Austin's one of those artists that I'm really drawn to, which I really love artists that pick a subject matter and they just like invest in it and they continue to dig into mine a material over and over again. So he's been doing these bird paintings for a couple years now. I think they get better and better. To me, the way I look at the paintings of the birds, it's almost like the bird is just a means for creating abstractions and compositions where there isn't an actual deep theory related to the animal. Like when you speak with him about the works, it isn't just like, say, a statement on environmentalism or something like that. It's really just like, he thinks they're beautiful. He sees a way to create abstractions and compositions that are unique and also art historically relevant. I think his work relates a lot to German Expressionism. Obviously, like Paul Klee would be a really big influence on his practice. But it's such like a blending of that and kind of almost 1960s design and textile design, which I think is really interesting and still very playful and beautiful and really interesting. And I agree. I think the way he uses colors is actually very sophisticated. Like it's kind of hard to tell in online, but like if you look on the bottom of the screen where these sort of dark green marks, there's multiple layers of different chromatic applications underneath that. When you see it in person, you see streaks of green with bumps of purple, with bumps of pink, and so they're more multifaceted and textural when you see them in person, which is really nice.
Well, I am glad that you're showing him, and I know that he's doing really well. And the last one is Hillary, and that's another artist that I discovered many years ago when she was showing with this guy whose name escapes me. I'm sorry. It was on 28th Street. And I was obsessed with her work, and like, it was like the canvases were $1,000, seriously. And I was just obsessed with her interiors. And look, but hear this, everybody. None of my clients wanted the work, okay? None. And there were like probably 20 canvases on this guy's gallery on 28th Street, and I forgot his name, but I will remember. I just forgot his name. And there were like large interiors, small interiors, still lifes, flowers. None of my clients. Guess what? Nobody can get Hillary anymore.
Yeah.
I love this. And guess what? Some of the very same clients who said no 8 years ago asked me for one. And I actually went and dug into my archives from like 8 years ago, I had to call the web company. That's how I am, right? Like, I was like, you're gonna see. And I sent it to them and I said, you remember when I showed you this? And this is the deal. It's not that her work was bad. It's pretty similar. I mean, this is an artist who's been very consistent for many years. It's not that she was doing something that was, oh, you know, it was horrendous. And now she's like, you know, this black swan that turned into this big, no. It was the same work. And it's just like now, you know, people actually opened up their eyes. And I was, first, I'm sad that we cannot get her, but I'm also happy when I send those emails back to them and say, you know, you remember this? It was $1,000. Lol, now you can't get none. So I wanted to put her here because she's amazing. And I think that it's also, you know, one of those artists that, you know, uses intense colors, and she does this interiors that look like she may be pulling from Willard, or she may be pulling from Matisse. And it's like, wow, amazing. She, you know, gives you the sense of you're being part of it. She is inviting the viewer inside all the time. I mean, she's one of those painters whose work draws you in. And, you know, I'm thrilled to see her being so successful. And also, obviously, as she keeps painting and inventing more situations and mixing more art, you know, pieces of art history in her work, and, you know, this beautiful colors. I mean, it is just this invitation of detail and beauty, which she handles so masterfully.
Yeah. I think one thing, like mentioning like the art historical references with her, one thing that's really fun, it's not just the application of paint that have art historical references, but it's not shown in this piece, but regularly in the interiors that she paints, there will be exhibition posters from museums and monographs, and the way she paints those, it allows her to incorporate different styles of painting techniques into the same canvases, which is always pretty fun. And I know that a lot of people really respond to the work, really love seeing the names of the other artists that are on the monograph, knowing that those are an influence on her overall practice, and particularly when they're artists that you wouldn't necessarily think would be here. Like Mike Kelly or Jim Shaw, or someone that you wouldn't necessarily think of having a direct connection to, sort of landscape and interior paintings. When you actually see them brought into her world, knowing that they are a big influence, it kind of makes the overall practice and the overall thought process behind the work seem more rich.
Well, she's phenomenal, and you know, I think we wish we could get more, but okay.
Me too.
Right?
Yeah, I wish I had them too, but yeah.
Well, congratulations on the work that you're doing, because it takes a village and enormous commitment. And this is not just to Adam, but all of you gallery directors and owners, how much work goes into this business, and sacrifice, planning, money, marketing, intense hours, and you know, it's hard. And so you know, always humbled by, you know, your commitment and your tenacity to do the work that you do, and continuing supporting month after month a new show, a new body of work, bringing artists in, signing up, you know, for all these art fairs, and now doing it all online, which is not ideal, but it's always very, you know, as an entrepreneur myself, it's very exciting to see people committed no matter what, because that's like the way that, you know, businesses succeed and careers succeed and artists obviously succeed. And so I'm also very excited that you all are invested in your emerging artists and bringing new talent for us to see. And so that's, you know, it's a gift. It's basically a gift, and to give this platform to the artists while they are unknown, and keep, you know, basically supporting their careers through museum shows and acquisitions, and strategically partnering with the right people to get their careers off the ground is very important and is a job that not everybody can do well, but you guys clearly know how to do it. And because of that, you know, my respect to you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So am I missing something? Am I missing something or someone?
I don't think so. No, I think you've covered everyone. All of your picks have been covered. I don't know if there are any questions from anyone in the chat. I don't think so. Just a lot of positive comments about how great the conversation was. Yeah, and it was really fun and really interesting. And I really love, Maria, that you pointed out how hard it is to have a gallery and how hard they work and how important what they do is for all of us, because I think it's not talked about enough. So thank you.
Oh my God, it's a horror. Listen, I am telling you that I just have to say it is. And, you know, it is a horror, and it requires an enormous amount of time and commitment and leadership, right? Like, I feel that when you have your name on the door, you have to really step it up because it's your name, right? And so that's very, even if your gallery doesn't have your name, we know who the owners are, and you know. So it's a really big responsibility, and it's not a game. It's a very serious business, and you know, we all know that as serious as it is, it also demands an enormous amount of stamina and to compete like in this world, right? In the world of like art fairs, and now everything is online, and you know, pushing and you know, having a you know, the bandwidth to support the artists' careers, and not just let's do a show, hang the thing, sell it next. It's so much more than that, and you all are doing it, and so that's very important. And that's the actual way that you run a gallery.
Right. Exactly. So thank you, Maria, for your time and for the great conversation. And thank you to all the galleries for being a part of the fair and for joining this conversation. And yeah, I think we can...
Well, thank you all. It's my pleasure. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in person soon.
Same.
And, you know, I'm pretty sure we'll be doing more things in person by the spring. And, you know, I'm excited to see what you guys are going to be working with in the next few months.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, guys. Love talking
Thank you,
to
Maria
all.
and Nada.
Thank you, Nada.
Have a great rest of the week.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.